Hey guys, if you're a first year medical student or anyone really trying to figure out how to study for medical school, you've come to the right place. So my name's Natalia, I'm a second year medical student and I found it really difficult to figure out how to study when I came to uni. Medical school is obviously very different from A-levels, and I think you'll find that no matter how much you had your method down at A-levels, you're gonna have to make some changes for it to work with med school. This video isn't really about me telling you exactly what to do, it's more about me helping you figure out your method because it's gonna be different for everyone. It really depends on how you want to approach things. The most important thing is to be patient and don't be afraid to make changes along the way. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this method for 6 months or whatever. It doesn't matter how much time you've sunk into it. Trust me, I've been there. Don't be afraid to change it because you're just going to waste more of your own time. Honestly, it took me until like the middle of the third semester, so don't worry if it takes you a long time. I know people who figured it out in the first 6 months. I know people who are still figuring it out. It really depends on you. So what we're going to be talking about in this video is how to study for multiple choice exams and written exams. I won't be covering CCAs or OSCEs if that's how you know them, but I will be covering those in a future video, so keep an eye out. The first step, and I would say the most important one, is finding out what you need to learn. This really depends on your university, how you find this out. For us, we get these ILOs, so intended learning outcomes, at the beginning of every week, and then we have to cover that content from Monday through to Friday. I actually think they released them the Friday before, but I'm not that ahead of things, so I definitely don't look at them before Monday. So when you sit down to study the content, the best thing to do is to take those intended learning outcomes or whatever your university provides and put them in a document. Have a good read through them. Trust me, so many people don't do this. I know it sounds stupid, but like some people will paste it into ChatGPT straight away. Like, don't do that. You will literally waste so much of your own time. It takes a minute to read it and it will help you so much. So just make sure you read it properly because you'll save time by knowing what you're looking out for. And I think this is one of those really important differences between med school and A-levels, because in A-levels you kind of have this mentality of learn everything, like absolutely everything. So you'll have a textbook and it doesn't really matter what your learning outcomes are, like what your teacher gives you or whatever, because you're gonna learn everything that's in the book anyway. But it's really not like that in medical school. If you try to learn everything that's in whatever resources you're using, you're going to waste a lot of your own time. You're going to cover about 10% of the content probably by the end of the week. You're going to be an absolute expert on the first 3 pages of the book and not know anything else, and it is not going to help you in exams, trust me. Honestly, the sooner you let go of the learn everything mentality, the better for you, because it's not going to happen. You're not going to learn everything. Also, different medical schools have different intended learning outcomes for their students. While something might be useful information in general, there might be like a whole chapter that you don't need to cover right now. They might want you to cover it later. It might just not be relevant for you. Just don't waste your time trying to learn everything. The next step is to decide your strategy. What are you going to do? So this is not about actually doing it, it's about knowing what you're going to do before you do it, so you don't sit down to study and you're like, what's going on? So for me, for example, when I have lots of time and I'm chilling, I'll do stuff like read textbooks, take some notes down from those, watch videos like Osmosis, they have really good videos, Wikimedics, and also a bit of Google. But if your exams are a week away and you're in the trenches, change your approach a bit. This is when I would do something like use my friend's notes, find some pre-made notes online. While it's not technically ideal, it has worked for me a lot. It's especially good if you have someone who's on the same course as you at the same medical school and use their notes, because it's very likely to cover the same content. I actually do this a lot, and while some people might see it as lazy, so be it. It works really well. I have a friend who lets me use his notes. They're really good. I find they cover the lectures really well. It's exactly what I need. And for him, he learns really well by sitting in lectures and writing down the content. Whereas for me, I don't have the attention span. So for me, it's better if I have the notes written down and then I look through those. So if you have friends on your course who like to learn that way, then why not ask them if you can use their notes, you know? Offer to buy their notes if you feel too cheeky. The key thing here is don't make an unrealistic plan. Don't say it's a week before the exams, oh yeah, I'm gonna use textbooks and videos for everything and I'm gonna write out notes and then I'm gonna make an Anki deck out of it. Like, if it's not gonna happen, then it's not only not gonna happen, you're gonna waste your time trying to make it happen, and then you're gonna be on the 3rd Anki flashcard and you realise your exam is 2 days away. So don't do it. Honestly, it's better to cover everything at a basic level and then go back over it than to be really well versed on like 20% of the content and miss the rest. Basically, you need to let go of your ego and just admit it if you're not gonna finish it. Just don't torture yourself. There's just no need. If you don't have time, then you don't have time. Now, step 3. Before we actually get to revising the content or learning it, is to look at some practice exam questions. Now, this might sound counterintuitive, but it's actually really useful. I learned this method from a friend. The best thing is if you can get targeted questions that are to do with your week's topic. What you want to do is open those questions without looking at the answers, just read the questions and read the options, for example, if it's multiple choice. That really helps to give you an idea of what it is that you actually need to learn. You've got a vague idea from reading your learning outcomes or whatever you've been given by the university, right? But that's still not exact. Under each one of those learning points, there's still so much stuff that could possibly be missed or could be high yield and you don't know. And while this isn't going to be obviously 100% accurate, you can't say, oh, because this didn't come up, it's not going to be assessed. But you can generally get a really good idea of what kind of things to look out for, especially if you're short on time. Because for some topics, for example, like say for immunology, there might be a lot of questions on the immune cell type. There might be like this one area that will be very high yield for you to learn and will get you like 15 out of 20 of the answers compared to everything else. I know I spent a lot of time at the start just looking at stuff and trying to learn everything, even like from my friends' notes. And then there's all these sections that are, well, not completely useless, but it's like I spend so much time gathering detail on something that comes up as a 1 marker and then completely skip out on something that could have got me like 5 or 6 marks. So it's a really good method to use. Looking at the answers also shows you how hard it is to answer the questions, because for example, if it's a size of something, a measurement or a calculation. Okay, if you've got like 400, 8,000 and 2,000 micrometers of something, that's going to be a lot easier to remember than if they put it as like 400, 420, 440. So you kind of know how much you need to focus on remembering what level of detail. Now, I would say the golden grail method for this is if you can do what I've just said, look at the questions without reading the answers before you do your revision. Then once you've done it, have a go at those questions, see how you do, and then if you have access to more questions, do even more questions that you haven't seen before, and then you'll get a really good idea of how well you've learned the content. Obviously, you'll get better at doing this over time. I didn't get the hang of it straight away, but the longer you do this method, the better you'll get at spotting what to look out for. This allows you to filter out stuff that is low yield and not even completely skip it out necessarily, just like don't focus on it so much. Don't waste 3 hours on something that's not going to come up or is going to come up as a 1 marker. Honestly, medical content is full of low yield info. There's so many random details you could learn about things. It's just impossible for a human to learn it all. So don't waste your time trying to learn everything. I know I keep saying this, but it's so important because coming in from A-levels where I literally memorized everything word for word and got A stars, it was so hard for me to let go of my ego and just accept that I'm not going to be able to learn everything. And it's really important to do that. So if you're anything like me, then just let go of that ego. Step 4 is to pick how you're actually going to learn and revise. So we've talked about picking your resources. Now it's time to pick what you're actually going to do with those. You've got a few options here. Some people make paper notes, some people type it up, some might write it on their iPad. Obviously there's Anki, we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. This is another one of those situations. There's definitely not a one size fits all. It's going to be different for everyone. Like you might have a friend who really likes making paper notes. You might think that takes ages and you're not doing that, which is fair enough because I don't really do that. If anything, I do a little. I do like summary notes at the end of the semester, but that's not the same. But I'll tell you a bit more about my own method in a minute. What I wanted to talk about a bit is Anki. So if you're watching this video, you've probably heard of Anki by now. You might have even used it a lot for A-levels. Anki is a digital flashcard system, which is really great for memorizing content with spaced repetition. What I wanted to talk to you a bit about is why I've moved away from using Anki so much in medical school. So for my A-levels, I swore by Anki when I came to med school, especially since it's such a med student thing. I was sure I have to do Anki to memorize everything and do well. But for me personally, okay, it depends how you use it. It's great for anatomy, but if you're trying to use it for all of your content, again, it depends on you. But for me, it was a massive waste of time because it's so hard to cover that amount of content in flashcards. It takes so long to make the flashcards. While obviously making the flashcards is a part of your learning process, I don't think it's a high enough yield way of learning for how long it takes. If you're amazing at making flashcards really quickly and you can chuck all that content in there in, you know, an hour or two, then go for it. But for me, I used to spend like 4 or 5 hours and still not be able to finish my deck for the week. I think part of this problem was also because at the start I was trying to put too much detailed content in there, so there's that too. But I still don't think it's the most effective way to learn such a high volume of content. The thing as well is in medical school, a lot of content is assessed through multiple choice questions. And this might sound really obvious to you, but when I was making my Anki flashcards, I never thought about the fact that Anki is great for memorizing information exactly and very well, and you really don't need that for multiple choice questions. Memorizing a sentence from the textbook is just, you don't need to do that. Like, I know for A-levels, you had to write out a 6 marker, and for AQA, for example, you need to use this very specific wording. You need to get it perfectly. But in medical school, if you're doing it for a multiple choice exam, you're wasting your time, because all you really need to do is understand the content well and be able to recognize the correct answer. Obviously, this is different with something like if you've got some written exam components, or if you're doing CCAs, then for those kind of things, you might want to focus a bit more on learning the content more exactly. But overall, all of your learning, I don't think it's a very effective method. Again, obviously, you've got the fact that you can use Anki and just not memorize it, so word for word. You can be better at filtering out what content to put in. But for me, I just found it all too confusing and time consuming, so I've stopped doing that. This brings me to talk about how I split my learning into anatomy and then everything else, because learning anatomy is very different. Like, it's very visual compared to, you know, the other content. So as I mentioned earlier, before absolutely slandering Anki, it's actually really good to use it for learning anatomy. To be more specific, it's really good to use the image occlusion option. Most of you probably already know this, but for those of you who don't, it's a very useful way to learn. So my personal method with this is I use a pre-made deck from someone from my school. You might be able to get one from someone from your school too. You may be able to download one online. But for our first year, there was literally a free Anki deck online that someone had made and just posted. And also just ask people who were a year above you. And also maybe some people in your class. I know people who made their Anki decks like the summer before. A lot of people are willing to share. I hate to say this because like someone's got to do it, but for me personally, again, making the Anki decks for anatomy was like time consuming and low yield. Maybe because I'm a perfectionist and I just spent too much time making them perfect. Maybe you guys can do it faster, but if you're making image occlusion Ankis, you're not really learning anything. It's not like typing it out. You are just literally burning time. So if you are able to get your hands on someone else's deck, then I would really recommend that. So what I do then is I start doing the Anki deck just to learn what's where type of thing. Then obviously you've got different things like your innovation, blood supplies, and some things that aren't completely visual. Those things is when I would go and look at some of the resources, maybe make a table. You will probably need to look at other resources, but for me, it's better to just get into the learning it and then go from there. So if I'll be on a flashcard and I don't fully understand something, or it's like a zoomed in diagram and I can't see the orientation of that or where it is, that's when I'll go to another resource, stay on that flashcard, make myself understand it, then remember it and move on. Some really good resources I'd recommend is Complete Anatomy. That's an app you can download on your phone or your iPad. Then you've got Teach Me Anatomy. That's a free online resource as well. They have like these color-coded diagrams, which I love. And last of all, if your uni provides any resources, do be sure to check those out. I'm not gonna lie, the ones we get aren't very good, but we don't talk about that. Now let's talk about my actual study workflow. So we've already discussed a lot of this. Like I said, this video is more about me helping you figure out what is right for you, not about exactly what I'm doing, but it will be good just for me to summarize this. So the first thing I do is I read the ILOs, the intended learning outcomes. Sometimes I highlight a little if I see some keywords. Then, like I said, I look at some practice questions. I just read those without reading the answers. Then I decide what resource I'm gonna use. Throughout the semester, I don't make any notes or anything. If anything, I'll do a few Ankis here and there, maybe watch a lecture, watch a few videos, that type of thing. But when it's coming up closer to exam season, I like to make these summary notes. So again, I said I don't make paper notes. I kind of do, but it's not a full detailed thing. I take out the key, most high yield information that I definitely need to memorize and I write it down. Throughout making that, I'm watching these videos and stuff, I'm learning, I'm making sure I understand everything. But then I sort of have these quick cues, so that if I get some questions wrong, I can go back to that, or even I can, on the morning of the exam, have a read through that and just remind myself of the key points. So it just kind of looks like this. I'm literally just putting down the key information. It's not everything, like this alone would not pass me my exams, but because I learned the stuff around it, reading this kind of reminds me of everything. The most important thing is to understand the content well, and then it will come back to you much easier. It's less about memorization and more about understanding sometimes. But then again, there is a lot of memorization, so be ready for that too. Now, the next thing I do is I go and do those multiple choice questions. I see what score I got, and then the ones that I got wrong, I take the answers from those. I look back in my notes. Is it something that I've forgotten, or is it a misconception? If this is something that I misunderstood, I go back and change that in the summary notes. If it just wasn't mentioned in my notes, I'll go and write it in. Sometimes if you want to save time, it's good to use a summary resource or someone else's notes. But then just make sure that if there's a part that you don't really quite understand or you think it's not detailed enough, then that's when you go to the more detailed resources. So after adding the missing information to my notes, what I'll do is I'll give myself a score out of 20, see how many I got right. If I did really well, then I may just move on, but good practice would be to do another set of questions if you can get your hands on one, if you have time for that as well. If I don't have a lot of time, I'll move on to the next case, and then I'll go back and do a second set of questions for every case at the end. If my score is still too low compared to what I'd need to get in the exam, I'll do another set and another set. Like, just keep digging for questions. It might be difficult to keep getting them, but as long as you're actually reviewing your mistakes, like what you're getting wrong, and finding out that information, your score should improve. Now, the next thing I'd say is to do a full mock before your exam. You can basically get a really good idea of how you're gonna do by doing some kind of mock test. If your medical school doesn't provide those, then maybe just get some question banks and just, select those topics and put them together. It's not gonna be 100% accurate. I did really bad on an end of semester test when I did it like the night before my exam. I got less than 50%, and then I did the exam and I got like honours. So don't stress yourself about it too much, but especially if your medical school provides one, then you can see how heavily they focus on what content. Obviously, the actual exam might be biased to something else, but at our school, it gives you a pretty good idea, and I think it just helps you with the timing as well, just, everything that a mock exam would always do. So just before we end the video, I just wanted to give you guys some final advice. Again, what I'll say, you're probably going to change methods multiple times. It's gonna take you a while. Just keep trying. Don't be afraid to change your method. Remember, it's okay to feel lost at first. It's okay to feel lost halfway through the second year. Like, it's never too late to change your method and find a better way to do it. So just figure out what works for you, because everyone's different. Just remember, focus on progress, not perfection, and don't try to learn everything at once. Don't try to learn everything anyway, okay? Not just at once. Just don't try and learn it all. Just learn what you need to, okay? Don't go down rabbit holes of textbooks and the other textbooks and all of the pages and all of the words of the textbook. Don't do it, please. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.